Welcome to Top 3 with Strada Law, where we explore the intersection of the law with your life and business journey. At Strada Law, we're committed to changing how you view lawyers and the legal profession. So in this podcast, we have real conversations with real people about real things, not just legalese. We'll talk with those who have faced the challenges you're facing so you can learn from their experience. And we'll share 3 easy to remember takeaways on each episode. Yeah, we'll talk about the law, but we'll mostly talk about life and business and how the law overlaps with almost everything that you do. I'm Jeneva Vazquez, the owner and principal attorney of Strada Law, a law firm focused on serving estate planning and small business planning clients, and I'm your host. As a quick disclaimer, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer unless we've entered into a written agreement to work together. I'm licensed in North Carolina, New Mexico, South Carolina, Florida, and New Jersey, and can serve clients in those states. Nothing said here today is intended to be legal advice, and this information is for educational purposes only. With me today, I'm excited to welcome Ticora Davis. Ticora founded the Creators Law Firm in 2017 to help experts and entrepreneurs protect their brands so they can grow their business with peace of mind. Her work has been featured on VH1, Black Enterprise, and in partnership with Facebook. The Creators Law Firm has helped hundreds of business owners secure their brand and proudly boasts a 98% success rate for trademark registrations. Powerfully positioned as an intellectual property advocate, Ticora Davis is the attorney, author, and speaker providing culturally relevant legal representation to Black women and creatives of color. As a purpose advocator, Ticora seamlessly blends her knowledge of creative business law with her passion for pushing women to achieve economic freedom. Welcome, Ticora.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on. I'm a little bit of a fangirl of yours, I guess is how I would describe it.
I'm a fan of yours too. I'm so happy we are mailbox neighbors.
Yes, true. Yeah. We're mailbox neighbors, but you actually were, I didn't even know you, and you were a big inspiration to me as I was starting to build my firm because of your branding. Because you, like me, don't have your firm branded with, a bunch of law books and leather chairs and mahogany furniture, and you're a little bit more accessible to the general people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it has to be that way. In light of the entrepreneurs and the experts and the business owners that we serve, many people want to have, a intimate relationship with their attorneys, and it can be a huge turnoff if they feel like, wow, this individual who I want to work with and partner with to protect my brand, they are very highbrow. They're speaking in a language I don't understand. They are kind of in this dark office and a collection of books behind them. And so those things don't often invite, trust into the relationship. So I definitely wanted to do something completely different. And it's very intentional in how I branded myself. Even from day one, I knew I needed to do something like this.
That's agree. And I think as I was starting to put together my brand, you had a lot of influence on me. So I appreciate you being willing to take a stride in a different direction for female lawyers and younger lawyers and regular people who, want to have access with a lawyer who speaks their language. So I think you're a real trailblazer in that space.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about your firm and how you got started, a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. So I started the firm in January 2017. That 2016 was just a rocky year for me. I had been licensed in March of 2016 for about a year. And I was pregnant with my first child, and I got my first job at a law firm, and I was super excited because the law firm was an entertainment law firm. I was delighted. I thought, wow, I get to actually work with the people that I want to work with, these creators and these inventors and these artists. But unfortunately, the work environment was not one in which it fostered creativity. It was a place where we walked on eggshells. It was a place where we were yelled at and cussed out. And I'm carrying life, And I was like, gosh, this is just such a hard position and place to be in. I even felt at that moment in time, like, this is what you have to do. Like, you have to stay here. This is your only option. You have to be here. You're a young attorney. You didn't go to the best law school. This is it. Like, you're going to just have to grin and bear it. And I had my son in May 2016. And when my son was 10 days old, I received a call from the supervising attorney, because I said, hey, I will be able to come back to work in a couple of weeks, and maybe I could start reviewing some things from home in preparation for the transition back to the office. And it was at that time, when I was holding my son in my arms, where he told me, I no longer think you're fit for the success of this firm. I believe you need to focus on healing and stay home and get over your pregnancy brain. And so that everybody is like, what the heck? And, I think at that moment, I wasn't even surprised, because of how he treated me before I had my son, that those words would come out of his mouth. And I certainly don't think that I was equipped with the confidence that I have now to even respond eloquently to something like that. And so I just thanked him for the opportunity, and I sheepishly got off the phone. And, even other attorneys would say, you could sue him, and I'm like, it's my word against his. I know what it's like. Litigation is time consuming, it's costly, it's expensive, and it's emotional. And I'm a first-time mom and don't have a lot of money. And the only witness to that conversation was my husband. I didn't think that it was going to turn out quite well if I pursued something. But more than anything, I really didn't want to take the time away from, just focusing on myself and my new family to pursue something like that. And so I began to look for opportunities at like a doc review. And so that's all that I could get. So I began to work doc review starting in June 2016. And I believe during that time and over the coming months, and applying for over 100 jobs in the legal field and not getting a call back, that, that light that kind of began to go out in my head, and I began to kind of spiral a little bit downwards. And I just kind of thought, this can't be it. Like, I'm smart, I'm passionate, like, I know that I could be a great asset to any organization. And I just prayed, and I'm like, God, like, come on, like, what's going on? Like, there's no doors opening for me. There's no opportunities. There's nothing opening up to me. And in October 2016, that's when I just asked that question, like, are you trying to tell me I'm supposed to start my own thing? Like, I'm supposed to have my own law firm? And that was the moment in which, like, this peace came over me, like, yes, like, finally, my child, like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, no, like, this is not what I want to do. This is not the answer I wanted. I even said in law school, I'll never open up my own law firm. I want to work for someone else. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want those problems. So I'm like, wow, I said I would never do this, and this is actually what I have to do. And so, that prayer, after I've kind of just asked, is that what I'm supposed to do? Then I'm just like, well, fine. I'm just going to do it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Because things are pretty bad right now. I'm only getting paid like $750 to $1,000 a month working at doc review and not working consistently and running from one thing to the next. And at that moment I said, okay, fine. I'm not going to call this the law office of Ticora Davis. Like, that's not what I'm about to do, because I don't want to have to explain to everyone I turn, like, what I do every time I turn around. I don't know why that question came to mind. But then I said, what am I going to call it? And he said, well, you're my lawyer, the creator's lawyer, and so, being God's lawyer. And I said, oh, well, okay, I'll be the creator's lawyer, and then I'll have the creator's law firm. And so even though, I serve my creator, I'm also serving his creations, his people, these creative people who have these amazing ideas that can change the world. And so, I believe truly naming it the law firm and having that name has invited a lot of blessings. It humbles me because I know who I'm working for. But it also helps people know that, oh, this is the place that I need to be. So, I got myself together a couple months later, and I scraped up the little bit of money that we did have left over to form the business. And when I opened the firm doors, January 16, 2017, 6 days later, I got a phone call from VH1, and they wanted me to be on a TV show. And so it was like that started this wild, crazy roller coaster ride of where we are today, from being a solo lawyer to now a small firm owner, and we are growing rapidly every month, every day, and I'm learning a lot. So, it's a lot. It's a beautiful story, and I'm still learning a whole lot, almost 4 years in.
Well, your story is inspiring to me, and I think it's probably inspiring to, for sure, other female lawyers, but probably a lot of other female business owners in general, and especially with the whole being displaced after having a child, and we could probably talk for hours just about that issue alone, right? And especially in our profession, how there's just never been a space for moms. And it's really a tragic part of the legal field that I hope we will eventually be able to overcome. But I think your story is like a lot of other stories of entrepreneurship, where all of a sudden, the world is showing you all these signals. And then eventually, once you start to believe the signals, it starts to make sense. And then almost nothing else seems like a good idea after that. Then it's like you can't see yourself in any other role.
Yeah, what's beautiful about it is once I accepted the fact that you're supposed to build your own thing, that what you've been searching for this whole time doesn't exist because you're supposed to build it, I didn't apply for any more jobs. I was like, there's no point. Like, it's a waste of my time because I need to be thinking about my own business. And amazingly, I began to write out, like, this business is going to be the go-to law firm for creative entrepreneurs and small business owners. I'm going to be the #1 trademark attorney. My law firm is going to be a safe place for women to work. I began to write those things because I realized that it was a need in the marketplace. I think also that I'm very thankful for not necessarily his words hurt. I'm thankful that it happened because he gave me the gift of doubt. And a lot of times when people doubt you, it's this gift that can fuel you. Like, that had to happen on my journey of entrepreneurship. One, he gave me such a beautiful story, and the story of an underdog. Like, people want me to win. And I never thought about it that way until I'm like, this was actually a really amazing story that I have, and testimony that I have. And even being there at his firm, he didn't teach me anything about law. He didn't teach me anything about trademarks. But what I did learn on the job was how to run a business and how not to run a business. And that was a skill set that I didn't have before. And so once I started my firm, I knew about systems and workflows and marketing. He was the person who was saying, you should be known as like a such and such lawyer. You need to brand yourself. And I was like, what? And so, he was saying those things. And I think he had a lot of smarts about him. He had a lot of great things going for himself. He just has a terrible attitude, and he's a terrible leader, and hopefully he's gotten it together by now. Don't know. But there were tools and things that I could glean from him that I was able to take with me into my journey of entrepreneurship that I think made the transition much smoother.
Yeah, it's a great story. And so in building the Creators Law Firm, I didn't know that part. I just always assumed that it was only associated with working with creatives. So that's also, a little sub brand there. But so you work with a bunch of creative entrepreneurs and people who are all different shapes and forms of business owners. What are the primary things that you do with your clients?
Okay. Well, one of the things that I think makes us very unique is our approach to providing culturally relevant legal representation. Although I have clients of all colors, all hues, all nationalities and races, I do have a particular emphasis on making sure that I'm empowering the African American community and those within the African diaspora. And the reason for that is that historically in this country, with respect to intellectual property laws, we've really gotten a short end of the stick as a collective. We see this even in some contracts for artists today. We see it in how artists from the early, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s, where unfortunately their intellectual property was taken. We hear of Elvis, taking songs from, different creators of color. And if you look and see the ramifications of that, Elvis has Graceland. You know, his legacy is there. His family is still being taken care of as a result of his intellectual property. Not saying all of his intellectual property was stolen, but many people say that it is. And if you look at some of the artists today, it's the same thing, right? And so there's generational ramifications when it comes to us not protecting our intellectual property. What's even more devastating was I didn't realize that when my foremothers and forefathers who were enslaved Africans, when they were freed, they had to assign the rights to their intellectual property, specifically their patents, to their slave owners in order to gain their freedom. So intellectual property and its relationship with those in my community has always been a tumultuous relationship due to how the law was construed. And so now, when I speak, a lot of my platform is sent to educate and empower my community, and even women as well. It's not been long in the history of this country that even women have been able to own property, unless, you know, without their husbands having to say something, right? And so now there's this big educational gap that needs to take place. And so I do a lot of education, empowerment, speaking, edifying, and then beyond that, we're really helping people understand the value of their IP. We will do things such as form businesses. We will make sure that the businesses are formed in a way and work with other third-party professionals such as accountants and financial planners to make sure that things are structured appropriately. For some of my clients at a higher level, even forming secondary businesses that can serve as IP or intellectual property holding companies, and creating unique licensing strategies that can assist them and save them lots of money from a tax perspective. We will search and register trademarks. We will defend trademarks. The same that goes with copyright registrations. We do a lot of contract drafting these days and ongoing advisement. So lots of folks work with us on a one-on-one basis or a project-by-project basis, where they say, we need one thing done, and we kind of deem that as a legal project. Then we have some other clientele who need more support and ongoing support on a month-to-month basis. And so after I have an executive legal meeting with them, then I create a unique customized plan based on their unique needs. Maybe you do need month-to-month support. Maybe it's quarterly support. Some of my clients, especially those who are in the financial space, they deal with a lot of fraudulent accounts. And so we're helping to defend their legacy by doing copyright violations or reporting that to social media platforms. And then sometimes we're brought in to train people's teams internally, and things of that nature. Our next step is to solidify our certification so that we can also provide the support to government entities and individuals such as like local hospitals or other businesses who may want to work or partner with a small firm, woman-owned, minority-owned firm, so that they can also get some legal work done. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do. Some people think, oh, they just mainly do trademarks, but it's so much more than that these days.
Yeah, and you and I have a little bit of overlap in some of what we do as far as working with small business owners. And one area that I do not do at all is any of the intellectual property stuff. I prime my clients to start thinking about those things on a big picture, because one thing that I see is small business owners, and I'm sure you see this too, there's even just something as simple as choosing what their business name is going to be. That's a really important thing. They have a difficult time either one, coming up with that, or two, they do very little preliminary searching for what's available to them. And so we had another episode that was about branding with Sarah Wells of Swell Design, and she puts together logos and helps clients start to think through their business name if they are stuck with that, and can't think of anything, or are having no ideas. But one thing we did not get into with her that I'd love you to talk about is, for a business owner who's taking their first couple steps, maybe they're a side hustler that's going to turn it into a business. Maybe they want to remain a side hustle, a solopreneur, or like somebody who's intending to grow into a little bit larger business. Yeah. What are some things that they could do to just start to search around to make sure that the name that they're thinking about choosing is really available?
Yeah. I always say that one of the first things that you should do is just look on Facebook, look on Instagram and Twitter, because 9 times out of 10, when someone has an online presence or they are planning to open a business, they go and they secure their digital real estate. That's what I like to call social media handles, your online home. So they're going to make sure that they secure their online home and handles. And so that's a really quick way for you to quickly tell, is there someone else who has the same idea as me? Now, you don't want to stop there though, because again, you can have what I like to call a brand twin, right? And so that's like a Dove chocolate and a Dove soap. Both have the exact same name, both owned by completely different companies, but their products are so dissimilar that they don't cause confusion. The whole thing about trademarks, guys, is my name the same or so similar to another brand that it will cause confusion, right? Some people think that, well, my name's not exactly the same, it's not identical, so I should be fine. That is not the legal standard. And so you don't want to stop there. So you want to look for, first and foremost, is there anyone else that has the exact same name or a super similar name? A quick way to do that is by looking on social media. And then if you do find a brand twin, then you want to look and see, well, what actually are they selling? What is the service or product provided? Because if it's in your same trade channel, you may want to steer clear, right? Another thing that you can do is, of course, you can go, and most attorneys will say, go on USPTO, look on there. Listen, that's going to be confusing. Go to trademarknow.com. This is actually the site where we have a subscription, and we use this as one of the many tools at our disposal to do comprehensive trademark searches. They have a free trademark search. It's not a robust search. It won't be anything like an attorney will do for you, but it pretty much mimics the search that's on the USPTO's website. And so you can type it in there and just see, are there any live trademarks? And I really like that search tool. One, because it will give you access to the USPTO database. It's more aesthetically pleasing to the eye as well. And I think I just like to look at pretty things, and hence my floor backdrop. But I just it just makes it easier for me to navigate sometimes if things don't look like Windows 95, right? So I like Trademark Now for that particular reason. It's a great asset and a great resource. And of course you could do USPTO.com, but I love Trademark Now because it's just easy for folks to navigate, and you can do a free trademark search as well. So I would say social media for sure, looking at all of those platforms, and then also looking on trademarknow.com just to see, is there anyone else out there in this kind of industry like me? And if not, those are all good signs. That's a great thing to do, because if you can figure that out on your own, then when you do work with an attorney, you can say, hey, I've actually done a search and I didn't see anything else out there like that, but this name, there's nothing out there. Can you do a comprehensive search for this particular name?
Yeah. And I think, to your point, and USPTO, by the way, for our listeners who are not familiar with that acronym, what does that stand for?
Oh, USPTO stands for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. The USPTO is where all trademarks and patents are filed, and not just filed, but also if there's any cases of infringement, and someone wants to challenge an existing trademark registration or a pending one, that would all happen before the USPTO. This should not be confused with the U.S. Copyright Office. The U.S. Copyright Office is a separate government agency that handles copyright registrations, assignments, etc. So those are two great agencies to know and be aware of, but they have two completely different functions and systems.
Will you talk briefly about what the difference is between a trademark and a copyright?
Sure. I like to think of intellectual property as this umbrella. And so, for example, criminal law is an umbrella. There's different things that fall under the umbrella, like, oh, a robbery is a type of crime, but so is speeding, right? So they're both different crimes that fall underneath the umbrella. Similarly, intellectual property is an umbrella, and underneath that umbrella, you have things like patents, trademarks, copyrights, personality rights, and trade secrets. And so those are all different types of intellectual property. So when you're asking or you're seeking an intellectual property lawyer, be very specific about what you need done. Okay, and so patents will basically protect any type of invention that you may have, something that has a function like the engine of the car or the inside of your phone and all the circuitry that works there. A copyright protects any literary or artistic work that's in a fixed, tangible medium. What's that legal mumbo jumbo mean, Ticora? Well, it just means that once the words are put to the text for a book, that can be eligible for copyright protection, meaning you've typed them up and it's in a Google Drive or a Google Doc, right? Copyright attaches. Or it could be an artistic work such as a photo, like all the photos that you took in your phone, there's a copyright to them and you own that copyright. So any type of work that has been captured and is in a medium that someone can experience. And a trademark is going to be any word, symbol, logo, tagline, in very rare cases, scents, smells, and sounds that can help people identify the source of goods or services, right? Which means that if I encounter La Strada Law, I know that that is your trademark, right? I can tell that when I encounter that trademark, oh, that there are certain services that are attached and tied to the services that you offer. So if someone encounters the Creators Law Firm, that's my trademark. It identifies my business. And then there are services that I offer through the law firm, such as legal representation, counseling, consulting, etc. And all of those things are tied and attached to my trademark.
That's a great explanation. And so, one thing too that we see, I wanted to go back to your example about the twin, the brand twin, because something that I see frequently, and I'm sure you see this as well, is where people will do a search and they'll see that there's one or two words that are different. And so that they think that that's different. How does your space, the law, address that type of an issue for those that are starting to dabble and looking?
Well, we have a seminal case that's called DuPont, and that's really like that foundational and flagship case that every trademark attorney should read and know and understand. Because within that case, it lists 13 different points that we should consider when we are conducting a likelihood of confusion analysis. And so there's different things that we look at to see, is there enough similarities in this word when compared to this one, or this mark when compared to another one? And so sometimes just changing the word, that's not going to be enough to overcome a likelihood of confusion refusal. Even flipping words around, right? So instead of it being Creators Law Firm, it's Law Firm Creators, right? Or Creators Law, it's Law Creators. That won't be enough sometimes to overcome a likelihood of confusion refusal. Even adding the article the or a or an in front of a word, some people think, well, like I had a client and he, for example, let's just say he sold gold grills, custom grills, right? And the name of his company was Mr. Clean, right? And someone else says, well, I'm not going to be Mr. Clean, I'm Mrs. Clean, but I still sell gold grills, right? Well, that won't be likely enough to overcome a likelihood of confusion refusal, mainly because people would think, oh, the two brands are probably associated. Like maybe this is a sister brand, maybe this is an offshoot of the brand, right? And so, but sometimes adding another word, if it has enough distinctiveness to it, it could be enough. And so sometimes it really depends. It's a case-by-case analysis. And I hate to give the legal answer of it depends, but it's really true. It really depends on what the word is, the context in which it's used, and how it's applicable. At the end of the day, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a prospective client or customer. It's really up to them. Like if we put ourselves in their shoes, would they be confused? Would they think that the two brands are similar? Obviously, if you're a sophisticated party and you're a business owner and you're like, oh, well, I know my business is different from theirs because of XYZ reasons, that doesn't mean that the prospective client or customer will. So we always have to put ourselves in the shoes of the prospective client or customer.
So yeah, and similar, it's the difference between Sam's lawn service and Sam's lawn mowing service, right? Those are very likely to be
I
like
mean,
confused by an average
I think
person.
that's a great example because that would likely be trademark infringement, right? Because Sam's Lawn Service and Sam's Lawn Mowing Service pretty much are identical, except one doesn't have mowing in it. But it still gives the same commercial impression, right? And the commercial impression is, oh, Sam's lawn service or whatever is going to provide services that will help me beautify my building or my lawn, right? And so that's what it also comes down to. What type of commercial impression? Do these words even have the same meaning and connotation together? Another thing we have to remember is consumers don't always remember full names. Sometimes consumers only pay attention to the very first word. And so that's another level of analysis that comes up. So if you have the same first word and then your second, third, and fourth word are different, sometimes that won't be enough either, because it's more likely for a prospective client or customer to remember the very first word in your trademark. And so sometimes that's what really just sinks the ship for folks.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great tips, and it shows the complexity of this, and I think from my personal opinion, there's some preliminary searching that you can do, but when it's coming down to the nitty gritty of deciding these things and figuring it out, I mean, a trusted legal advisor is the primary resource that most people should be turning to, a legal advisor like you. So at what point in someone's business development would you say that they should start to seek legal counsel and then really consider trademarking?
Yes, I think from day one. I think even before you launch, in an ideal world, everyone would meet with their attorneys before they launch their business. And most people don't. They just kind of hit the ground running and they get the business out there. And then when they have some capital, then they turn around and meet with an attorney. So in a perfect world, you would do it as soon as possible, ideally before you launch the product. Because here's what happens. Like what happened with one of my clients. They were doing a fantastic job. They were a local service provider. They were doing amazing work for locals, businesses, as well as, residents. And then they began to grow, and they were growing throughout their state of South Carolina into different counties. And then of course, naturally through that growth, they then turned and said, oh, now let's expand into North Carolina. And so they have been doing business for about 4 years underneath their brand name. And so, after you've been doing something for 4 years, you think you're smooth sailing. And so what happened was when they began to expand in North Carolina, because their name was, we'll say, what was my example? It was a local, I'll say something like Carolina Power Wash Company, right? And let's just assume that they provided power wash servicing to people in South Carolina. And so naturally, they started to expand into North Carolina. And so when they expanded into North Carolina under Carolina Power Wash Company, there was also a North Carolina company with the exact same name, Carolina Power Wash Company, and they have federally registered trademark for that name. They sent my clients, they became my clients after the infringement and after receiving a cease and desist, but they sent my clients in a cease and desist telling them, we have the federal registration, you must stop immediately. You have to rebrand your company, and you have to pay us X amount of money due to infringement and consumer confusion, right? So my clients had to stop. They had to rebrand. They couldn't take on any new clients. They could not promote their services. They had to relinquish the rights to their website, and it cost them about $25,000 in 30 days to rebrand. And so the reason why is because the person was the rights holder to the federal trademark underneath that same name, and them actually expanding into North Carolina put them on high alert. It's really, at the end of the day, up to the person who owns the trademark to police their brand. It's up to them to defend it. So some companies will not send cease and desist. Some will not tell you to stop because they may not have a very strong legal representation, or they may not even be aware that you exist. They didn't even know that they existed until they began to get bigger. And so that's really the scary part, that, you could be doing things very well for quite some time and kind of go away, and exist under the radar. but who knows what's going to allow your business to explode overnight, especially in the day and age where you can go viral within 24 hours or same day. So ideally, the best thing to do is to get it done as soon as possible. Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
That's true, because you might say, oh, I don't plan to ever grow beyond the borders of my county or the borders of my state. But with the way of the internet now, anyone's business almost all businesses are scalable to different parts of the country. And really, on a state-to-state basis, the only way that you can keep your brand protected is if you go to that federal level.
Exactly. That's the only way. And I think it's just, first, if you can't get the federal trademark, getting a state trademark is a great start, because then you still have protection within your own state. So either way, depending upon your unique marketing strategy and your overall plans, I think at minimum a state trademark is going to serve you quite well, because it will protect you in the state or the states in which you are operating in. Especially if you say, I only want to serve the residents of South Carolina. It still behooves you to get a state trademark, so that there's not any consumer confusion. I have that going on with a client of mine now who owns a credit company, and there's someone else who has the exact same name as her. And she's like, I need a trademark. And I said, yeah, you do, but you need to get a state trademark first. Sometimes, because the infringement is local, it's within the state. So sometimes it is a better strategic play to have a state trademark for that reason.
So for your top three, what I'd like to focus on is, thinking through a holistic picture for a small business owner and how they can, you like to say, protect their smarts, right? That's one of your,
that's my trademark.
Yeah, that's your trademark, protect your smarts, which I love. And, especially in the world now where we see it's a lot easier in some ways to start a business than it's ever been. And it's easier to put your stuff everywhere, right? You don't have to pay a dime for a lot of marketing that you can do. And so as you're going to be putting your stuff out there, you want to make sure, like you just said in that story, you're not spending all this time investment, money investment to building this company and this brand that's going to overnight have to be torn down, right? And a lot of businesses can't come back from that, honestly. You told the story about a $25,000, rebrand, but for some businesses that are just growing, they might not be able to survive that. So as a cautionary tale, I guess, if you will, what are your top three takeaways for a small business owner who's just starting out to start working toward to protect their smarts, as you would say?
Awesome. So a couple of things. So I would say first, in order to protect your smarts, I would say you definitely want to look at the structure of your entity, because going from a sole proprietor to an LLC, that's great, because it's actually going to protect and distinguish your personal assets from your business assets. But there's a certain point in time, generally when you can pay yourself as the owner of the business around $35,000 a year, some accountants will even say 40, you want to transition to S Corp. Why? Because it's going to save you thousands in taxes. So you want to make sure that you're paying close attention to, when does that look like in which I need to change my tax structure? A lot of people kind of fall asleep when it comes to that, and they're not even thinking or being made aware of that. You want to make sure also that you're not outgrowing the professionals on your team. Are they continuing to invest in their own expertise? If you have an accountant, I certainly don't want to be the highest revenue grossing client that my accountant has. I just don't. So sometimes you have to ask those questions to see, like, wait a minute, do I need to transition? So I would say make sure that you're paying attention to the revenue and speaking and consulting with professionals to make sure that you are positioning yourself so you can keep most of your money. The next thing that I would say undoubtedly is you want to have very strong contracts. If a pandemic has taught us nothing else, it is that we need to have our legal house in order. Many, many, many small business owners really felt the grave effects of the pandemic because, we couldn't have these in-person events. Things got shut down. Things were closed. Then you have other people who are demanding refunds on services and venue locations. Do you have insurance? What does your contract state about cancellations? Did your contracts have anything in there about cancellations due to force majeure events or impossibility of performance, right? And so a lot of times what happens is service providers did not have the appropriate legal protections within their contracts to account for something like this. I mean, you really can't blame anyone. Nobody knew that a pandemic was going to happen in 2020. We had no idea that that was coming, right? But being prepared is one of the best things that you can do. And if you aren't, in a position where you have that in place, these are things that you have to prioritize. If you're thinking about your 2021 launches, if you're thinking about the things that you're going to do to bring revenue into your business, the things that you need to be asking yourself are, do I have legal protections in place to really protect and preserve the money that I'm going to be hopefully making? And then finally, making sure that you have a very strong hold over your intellectual property. Not only should you look at trademarks for your business itself and also your taglines, but what about your signature programs or your flagship offers, right? These could be courses or academies or things like that that you're launching. One of my friends who's an attorney, she even trademarked one of her speeches that she gave on TEDx, right? And so she was able to build programs and offers around her speech. And so a lot of times what happens is we don't even think that our ideas are that valuable to protect until someone else wants them, until someone else wants to take it, until someone else is infringing. They were worthy from the beginning, right? And so I think we really need to reshape just that God-given creativity that we have innately inside of us and see that it is worthy and valuable. Not only that, when you really look at this, at the end of the day, we take a big step back. Really good legal representation and having your legal house in order doesn't just protect you, it protects your legacy. It protects those generations to follow. And so as we can see, some families do quite well in today's present age because of the steps that their grandfathers and grandmothers took when it came to protecting and preserving their family legacy and their intellectual property. And so that would be my top 3 tips. I would say, look at everything that I said, but really ponder over the fact, or really ask yourself, am I viewing my ideas as worthy as they are? Do I truly believe that what is inside of me and the seeds that are in my belly that I'm supposed to birth, that they are worthy of protecting? And if so, am I acting in accordance with those beliefs? And if not, you have to make a plan to get it done.
I love that. So just to recap, number 1 is to make sure your business entity is shored up and you're on the right track there. Number 2, your legal house is in order, which both of those I cannot agree with more. And then number 3 is to really evaluate your intellectual property and get it secure. Make sure you're even identifying if you have an issue that you should be talking with somebody about to start securing that, right? And really open your mind to the fact that what you're saying does have value and what you're doing does have value and should be protected.
Exactly. I love your summary.
So for our listeners, one thing that's really cool about your practice area, which is different than mine, is that in the federal space in trademark law and intellectual property, you can work with clients everywhere.
I love it. Yes, yes. I have hundreds of clients all across the country. And it's so amazing because I do practice federal law, I am not bound by state. So we literally can represent people with respect to their intellectual property, no matter where they reside.
Yeah, which is great. So no matter where our listeners live, and we do have listeners that are kind of on all different parts of the country, they should reach out to you and follow the work that you're doing and speak with you about protecting their smarts. Where can they find you if they wanted to get in touch with you or follow along with the cool stuff that you're doing in your firm and your business and all the great offerings that you have?
Yeah, so one of the things that you can do, especially if you want weekly tips that will help you start and scale your business and run it in a very smart and scalable way, is to text S-Class CEO to 33777. Again, I'm really sharing with you some things that you can do that are practical, easy, that can help you run a smarter and more scalable business. So that's the first thing that you can do. The other thing is that you can follow me on Instagram at Ticora Davis. So that's my first and last name together, or Creators Law Firm on Instagram. I give a lot of content there, videos, GIFs, and things of that nature. So I think that would be those perfect places that you could go to really follow and connect with me. And of course, if you are seeking legal support, navigating to creatorslawfirm.com and completing our contact form is the best place. But, if you're saying, hey, I'm not exactly sure where to start or what it is that I need, I think joining the text list where we send those weekly tips out by texting S-Class CEO to 33777 is the best place to start.
Great. And we'll be sure to link to all of your sites and everything in the show notes. This has been great, super informative. I'm so happy to have you on the show. And like I said, it's, I'm a little bit of a fangirl for you. So this has been fun for me to chat with you. And yeah, I appreciate the work that you're doing in all the spaces and being a trailblazer and advocating for, people who don't typically have a voice in your space. Yeah. So it's really great work that you're doing.
I really am honored. I mean, I'm so thankful. I think I'm very, very thankful to do the work that I do and just learn and grow because of where I was almost 4 years ago. I was very lost, didn't know exactly what I wanted to be or who I was called to be. And this business has really helped shape that. And so I'm just always thankful that I get to play a part and really helping other people live out their dreams. And so I'm thankful for platforms such as this. I appreciate you sharing your audience with me because that means a lot. It means that you're trusting my voice to go out to your people. So I appreciate that immensely. And so thank you so much for inviting me on again.
Thanks so much. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Top 3 with Strada Law. And thanks to our guest, Ticora Davis of the Creators Law Firm for sharing her top 3 takeaways with us. Be sure to tune in to new episodes of Top 3 with Strada Law bi-weekly and catch all the other shows on the Sal-E-Boys Podcast Network. Subscribe to the Sal-E-Boys Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. To find out more about Strada Law, visit us at www.lestradalaw.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.